Hey guys, it's Jeremy again. We're going to do another lap guide video. Today we're at Silverstone Circuit in the United Kingdom. We're driving the Chevrolet Corvette Z06 GT3R, running the setup I've been working on the past day or so. I'm pretty happy with where we've gotten it to. We're in a test session, but the test session was based off of the practice sessions that Tim's got set up throughout the week. So weather, track conditions, all that jazz are going to be the same as what we're working with throughout the week. Come race time, the track will be a little bit warmer by a couple degrees. It'll be a negligible difference, but the sun does move through the sky throughout the day. Who knew? So it will be off a little bit from what we're practicing on. Just keep that in mind. It's not going to throw anybody's setup out the window or anything like that. Silverstone it's just one of those iconic circuits. Growing up, this was always one of those coliseums of speed. And even though the layout's changed over the years, it is still very much so a coliseum of speed. There are a lot of high-speed, full commitment corners and corner complexes that challenge you lap after lap after lap. The layout has changed over the years, but a lot of the iconic corners remain. Maggots, Becketts, Chapel, Stowe, Copse. This is just one of those heavy hitter circuits that's got a lot of really great corner complexes, and they ask a lot of both driver and machine. We were able to pull off a 1 minute 58.156. It's a pretty good lap, all things considered. You'll notice when we run this lap guide, there are a couple spots that I got a little overzealous on my acceleration and had my hands full for a second. But quick hands were able to save the day. Just keep the momentum going forward, and we didn't scrub off too much speed. We're going to run this lap guide video the same way we ran our guides in the past. I'm going to run the lap at speed, and then we'll break it down and point out some of the key points that you're really going to want to work on. Apologies in advance if any of the lullabies are bleeding through. Little man had a doctor's appointment today, and I finally got him to sleep, so we're going to try and get this video going. Now, without further ado, let's hit it. And across the line. So as you can see, we're able to pull off that 158.156. That's a pretty good lap around here. You saw there were a couple moments I definitely had my hands full, which just means there's more time in it if I can actually get a good lap together. This is a coliseum of speed, but because of the high speed technical sections that this track does have, I've found that high downforce is the name of the game around here. Every time I've taken some wing off of this setup, The gains I do get down the straights are negated almost immediately by the next corner complex. Either the car is unstable on entry, or I'm not able to get as much power down as I want to on exit. Either way, it's compromised. So I've just left the downforce where it is. The car seems to take to it pretty well. And like I said, the high-speed corner complexes, you really make up that difference if you're able to get the car hooked up. The start of this lap, just like we've said in the previous videos, the start of any good lap begins with a good exit out of the final corner. We'll cover the final corner complex when we get to it. That being said, though, we're going to use as much of this runoff area here at the start of the lap as we can. I keep my right side tires on the track to the right side of this white painted line. You can drift a little bit further over to the left and end up on the black and white painted curb here. It isn't the end of the world. You don't really get an off track until you get closer to the green and white paint with your right side tires, but you don't really want to get that far out. You're not gaining that much speed running that wide. You're just risking an off track, if not a slowdown, if you run even further out. Silverstone is notorious for off tracks. You got to be really careful at a lot of different sections around this lap, and so you don't want to start off here by getting an off track. We're going to keep the car down the left-hand side of the road down the straight. Pretty straightforward here. We're just working its way up through the gears. Our entry to Abbey, you'll see I get on the brakes, but it's just slightly. We're just looking to get a little bit of the car's weight shifted towards the front tires and make sure that we've got good grip over the front tires for what we're about to do. We're carrying quite a bit of speed into this corner. You'll see I've shifted up into 6th, but we're off throttle. And so we've gone up a gear, but we're coasting. It's a little trick I picked up when we were running F4s here back in the day. Going up a gear helps the car maintain just that rolling velocity that it's picked up coming down the straight. You don't scrub off as much speed as you would staying in the lower gear. And when you do go back to apply throttle mid-corner, you're introducing less force to the car just because it's a taller gear, you're lower in the power band. And so it's less shock to the car. We're already asking a lot of the machine through this corner. And so if you introduce too much force too suddenly, it's going to unsettle the car, and there isn't really any saving it when you're at this speed. If the car comes undone, it's going to come undone in a big way. Smooth inputs is the name of the game. I know that's funny coming from me, but smooth inputs is the name of the game through here. Abbey is a very hairy corner. So we grab 6th gear. You go up a gear, regardless, different gear ratios for different cars, right? But where you are kind of dictates if you are going to go up a gear or not. If you're just able to hold that gear and you're low enough in the RPM, then just stick with that. But with the Corvette, I found jumping up into 6th benefits me a lot. Try not to jump too much of this apex here on the right side. I keep my left side tires to the left of this white painted line. You'll see a lot of these apexes, if you can cut them at all, I still try and keep 2 wheels on the track just to avoid that off track. They are absolutely brutal here. We're feeding it into the right. You can use a decent amount of the road to the left here, but you don't want to walk too far out to the left because we need to get back to the right and set up this left-hander. We're still carrying a lot of speed through here. Back to the left, I found that if the car is refusing to rotate through this section, you can sometimes cheat onto the grass just a little bit to help induce some rotation. But you need to be very careful. If you go too far onto the grass, the car is just going to come around on you. And like I said, we're carrying a lot of speed through here, so if the car comes around, it's going to come around in a major way. There's a lot of runoff area, sure, but there's also going to be other cars around here, and you don't necessarily know if you're going to be spinning off into that runoff area or if you're going to spear off into one of these walls that's waiting for you. It's always just better to err on the side of caution and lift if you feel like the car is not going to be able to carry that speed through this section. We want to get immediately back over to the left once we're through the Abbey complex and we're setting up farm. I usually look to brake between the 150 meter board. Nice and deliberate braking down the left-hand side of the road. We're going down into 2nd gear, and the goal here is to loop around this curb at the apex, because after this almost U-turn, we've got another almost U-turn back to the left. So we want to carry speed through here, but we also want to set this up with the idea that we want to be on the right side of the road once we come out of this corner, or we at least want to be working our way back towards the right side of the road coming out of this corner, because we need a good entry into the left that it almost immediately follows. The name of the game in the Corvette is avoiding these curbs. The Corvette does not like getting its wheels picked up off the ground. I don't know what's wrong with the thing. It's just scared of heights, I guess. But if you unsettle this car over the curbs or over a big bump, it takes quite a decent amount of time for it to kind of regain that good traction profile. It really unsettles the car. So I always just try and skirt around these curbs. Nice smooth throttle application. You really don't want to pick up any wheel spin through here. It just completely kills your time. You'll see I get up to about 80% and then just hold it there. And it's enough to just push the car the rest of the way around the corner, but it's not too much to where I'm breaking the back tires loose. And you see we cheat over to the right side of the road as far as we can. Back onto the brakes just a little bit, and we want to loop back around this apex on the left-hand side. And we're feeding throttle in just about as we're coming to the apex. And it's the same concept. We're just trying to push the car around the apex. You can see right now my steering wheel is straight, and we're facing the wall. It's never a good thing, right? So I got on it a little early. We're able to catch it a little bit, just a minor correction there. And there's a little bit of road that you can use to kind of let the car feed itself out and not scrub off too much speed. We're able to avoid that little mistake affecting us too much. And we continue our run out of the farm complex, through Village, onto the Wellington Straight. Coming through Village here, you don't want to chop too much of this apex. It's another one of those keep your right side tires on the right side of the white line here. Just try and keep two wheels on track at all times, and you should be golden around Silverstone. You aren't going to gain some massive amount of time by going further off track. You're just going to risk that off track or even a slowdown. We're flat. Once you come out of the farm complex, you should be flat until you're entering the end of the Wellington Straight. It's Brooklands, the end of Wellington. Pretty straightforward here. We're just keeping the car down the right-hand side of the road and working our way up through the gears. And I found here, coming into Brooklands, I'm actually able to gain quite a bit of time by pushing the brakes further and further into the zone. That being said, the car becomes much more unstable the more speed you try and carry into this corner, just because it's a tightening left-hander. So you're going to be gradually feeding in more and more steering angle as you're going through the corner, as you're scrubbing off more speed. And friction tends to only want to work in one direction at a time. So if you're asking it to slow you down and turn, only one of those is really going to win. It's just something you need to kind of balance. I've found that I try and get a decent amount of my braking done at first, just to scrub off that massive amount of speed we've picked up coming down this straight. And then I'm able to kind of trail brake the rest of the way without the car getting too crazy. You'll see I do have a bit of a moment coming through here, but it isn't the end of the world. So I'm braking right around between the 100 and the 50, so about 75 we'll call it. Hard on the brakes there at first, and you see I bleed it off pretty quickly. Down into fourth, and then we're looping it down into third, just to try and get around these little apex blocks here. You'll notice these kind of sprinkled around the track. They're nice little markers to use. It's another thing to note, you don't want to cut too far over this apex here. I try and keep my right side tires on the track here. If you go too far to the left, you will pick up an off track. Almost every corner here has an off track. It's absolutely brutal. You see we have a little bit of a moment here. Ideally, we would have been able to keep the car a little bit further over to the left to set up our run into Luffield a little bit better. But we're able to make it work. Again, we didn't lose too much speed through there, but it just shows that there's still a little bit more in there if I can get my shit together. Luffield is a difficult corner. It is a very long right-hander with a very late apex. You'll see these little blocks on the board. I use the final block as my acceleration point. I want to be kind of on the throttle prior to that point, coaxing the car around the corner. And then the goal is to get to full throttle at, if not just after, that final block for me. Obviously, each car is going to be a little different, but the Corvette I found is just mighty on these corner exits, and so if you can take advantage of that and start working the car around the corner with the throttle, it helps get the car planted sooner. That way you're able to maximize your acceleration out of the corner. You'll see here we're back to full throttle already, and we're just feeding the steering out and letting the car eat up the road that we have available here. You can use a decent amount of this runoff area. I found until you get your left side tires like into this gravel, you're not really picking up an off track. But it isn't quite a car's width, almost just barely. Your right side tires will probably just barely be over the line if your left side tires are touching the gravel. So it's one of those like 6 in one hand and half a dozen in the other if you're going to get an off track. I try and just keep my right side tires on the track through here. And then we're working our way out of Woodcot. Sorry, out of Luffield into Woodcot. As I'm preaching about how every single corner here has an off track, Woodcot is the MVP. You can chop off this entire apex if it is an apex. You know, this whole curbing doesn't exist. You just drive over it. Avoid this wall on the right hand side. Obviously it's a wall. We don't want to hit those. And now we're setting up our run into Copse. This is just one of the mightiest corners in all of racing. I can't remember how many times I sat there staring at cars just disappearing off camera as they veered to the right and out of sight through Copse Corner. It's insane. We can't quite pull that off in the GT3 cars, even with all the wing packed onto them, but we can get close. I usually give it a little bit of brakes just before the 50, just to get the car kind of rotated in and shed off a little bit of the speed. You don't want to brake too much though, just because it's really tough to gauge an acceleration point through here. You kind of have to base it on how much speed you are able to carry and how good of an entry you're able to get, how much grip the car will hold when you do toss it in there. So it's kind of a variable corner in that sense, but you do want to always kind of aim on coasting in and accelerating through. It's better to be able to push out of Copse than braking late into Copse, if that makes sense. So you can see we're already kind of coming off the brakes here, and we're easing it back onto the throttle. And as soon as I can tell that the line I'm on is going to hook up and the front end isn't pushing out on me, we're back to full throttle. This runoff area is terrifying. You have massive amount of real estate to work with out here, but the second your right side tires get too far past this little white line here, you pick up an off track. If you go even further than that, you might even get a slowdown. So you need to be really careful coming out of Copse. It's tempting to get on the throttle early and be able to utilize all this runoff area, but your lap's going to be gone if you do. We get really lucky through here. We don't pick up an off track or a slowdown, and we get to power our way through towards one of the next best corner complexes in all of racing. It's been copied at multiple circuits around the world. Maggots, Becketts, and Chapel. Into Maggots. We want to avoid this curb on the left-hand side here. Again, the Corvette hates him, but it's just going to unsettle the car on this entry, and we're carrying a lot of speed through here. This is a very high-speed entry into this corner complex, and any kind of bumps or rattles or pushes that we can avoid, we want to. We want the car to be as planted and as stable as we can in here, because again, we're about to ask a lot of it. You can chop a decent amount of this apex on the right-hand side. You don't want to get your left side tires over this line though, just because that's an immediate off track. We're bleeding off the speed nice and slow. You'll see I'm on the brakes, but I never really get above 30 or 40%. It's mainly just to keep the weight of the car planted on the front tires, so that I can control the direction change as best I can with that and just be able to catch it. With this setup, it does have quite a lively rear end. I like to be able to drive the car with the pedals as much as possible, and the Corvette seems really accepting of that. Through Becketts, into Chapel. Chapel is probably one of the most important corners on the circuit just because it's your entryway into the hangar straight. You've just worked through Maggots and Becketts, you've been shedding off speed the entire way, and now it's a matter of when do you get back on the throttle, and you do need to get back on the throttle because there's a very long straight waiting for you. We've got a lot of downforce packed on, and so Every bit of acceleration you can get through here is going to add up greatly by the time you get to the end of the straight. It can even save you from a potential overtake if you do have somebody behind you through this section. You can see we're already back on the throttle through here. The goal is to keep the back end pushing us through this section. I found if I lift too much or if I coast for too long, even if I get back on throttle, sometimes it's hard for the car to like re-engage that rotation. And so as soon as I get a little bit of a slip or I can feel that the car is starting to rotate the way I want it to, I try and jump back on the throttle just to keep that rotation going. It works out for me here. The car hooks up. We got a couple of hops, but nothing too crazy. You need to be careful here as well. This is another off track that's waiting for you if you run too far off into this little runoff area. Again, just keep your right side tires on the track and you should be golden. Keep the car down the left-hand side of the road coming out of Chapel onto the straight. You can use a decent amount of the road out here if you need to or if you want to. I found it isn't really all that beneficial though. You can usually just kind of keep the car hooked towards the middle of the road and it doesn't make that big of a difference. We're talking hundredths. And then we're going to keep the car in the middle, working our way towards the left-hand side of the road, setting up our entry into Stowe. We're looking for the 100-meter board here to set up our braking down the left-hand side. Bleeding off speed nice and smoothly. We're going down into fourth. I've found I'm kind of torn between holding fourth through here or grabbing third right near the end, just to be able to power out of the corner a little bit better. It's just nice to have in your pocket in case you need to, but fourth is a little bit more stable on exit, and it's just less hemming and hawing on the car because, again, we're lower in the power band, it's a higher gear, and so we're exerting less force through the whole machine. We're just floating around the apex here. And then we start feeding the throttle back in. Again, it's the same concept of just keeping that rotation going and pushing the car around with the rear end. Really lucky we didn't pick up an off track here. We did use quite a bit of that runoff area. We managed to keep our right side tires on the black and white curbing though, and I think that's what saved us. And now we're setting up our entry into the Vale chicane. Normally I'm looking around the 100-meter board for my braking here. I broke a little earlier than that just because we were pretty high up on the Delta at this point. She was mighty green and I didn't want to toss it all the way in this last chicane. Got big giant sausage curbs here. The Brits love their sausages and so we want to avoid these. They will ruin your lap, especially in the Corvette. Some cars might be able to attack them better than others, but with the Corvette, we're going to just do the same thing we've been doing with every curb we've met this season so far, and we're just going to try and loop around it. Keep the car over to the left as long as we can before we feed it back into the right, and then we got another little mini sausage here, like a party sausage, I don't know. We're going to work our way around that, and then we've got this Mondo curb out to the left. This is the Big Daddy sausage out here. We want to avoid that thing like the plague. You can use it as a berm if you absolutely need to, but it really unsettles the car. And we're flat after we make this right into, or coming out of the Vale chicane into Club Corner. We want to be flat from this point on until we get into Abbey, basically. So hitting this curb is really going to compromise that. It's going to unsettle the car, most likely cause you to spin out. Coming out of the final corner, which is, it's like worst nightmare, right? Because then your next lap is screwed as well. We get right up against it, but we don't touch it. Just feeding the car out to the left-hand side of the road, and now we're looking for this curb at the end. We want to just kind of get as close to we can to this curb, or close as we can to this curb without touching it, and we did a pretty good job of that. And then again, we're just using this runoff area here, but keeping our right side tires on the track just to play it safe. We don't want to pick up an off track and waste all of that hard work we just did. And back across the line. And so yeah, we were able to hit that 158, 156. It's a pretty decent lap, all things considered. Apologies again if the lullaby or the fussy baby came through at any points in time, but he is trying his hardest to be a trooper. He had a big old needle stuck in his leg today twice. Anyways, hopefully this lap guide is able to find you guys some time around here. If you were looking for any, maybe just give you guys some tips or tricks around Silverstone. I really love this track. It's a blast to drive. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.